Hello and welcome to another episode of No Strings Attached. I'm your co-host and executive producer, Ken Sky. And I'm excited to tell you about our guest today. Shaahin is a serial entrepreneur and Amazon expert whose career spanned for more than 30 years, earning over $1 billion. His Amazon products have outpaced Fortune 500's sales on the platform, selling millions of units worldwide. Many of these multi-million-dollar companies noticed, which led him to become one of the world's most sought-after Amazon expert. He has a new book coming out soon called Billion, the King of the Thrill Pill Cult, and it chronicles his rise to fame and fortune. And he also has a podcast with the same name too. As always, we are currently streaming live on LinkedIn, which means you can interact with us by writing in the comment section any comments you have, any questions, that we can respond to them while we're live. Without any further ado, please welcome Dr. Mark Goulston.
Okay. Enough of the applause already. Well, Ken, it's good to see you again, and I am equally excited to have Shaahin on. We've both known him for a few years. I may have known him for a few years more, and he is amazing at being able to see things that other people can't see, and he has this knack of pointing out things that are hidden in plain sight, obvious, but you never would have thought of them. And plus, he's one of the most generous, successful people that I know. And he's part of an organization that we all belong to. And he just gives away tips and information. If you're interested in selling anything on Amazon or just improving any process to become successful if you have anything to sell. But he's also a big-hearted guy. So, Shaahin, welcome.
Thanks, Doc. Great to see you.
It's great to see you. And he's a man of many backgrounds. Often we catch him when he's riding a bike or he's doing other things. So, Shaahin, how are you doing today?
I'm doing amazing. It is a glorious day outside. I feel like all the stuff with coronavirus is slowly dying down. People are becoming a little bit politer. People are becoming a little bit nicer, at least in California. I feel like we're coming to a good place. And, there's, I think, a sense of relief, across the board here. So I'm really excited, Doc. I think this is a really good time. And, I throughout my career, I've really felt like, the one really good quality that I've honed is kind of being able to look past the storm and see the opportunity on the other side. And I think now is going to be a time like no other for opportunity here. And I know a lot of people like change makers and thought leaders like yourself are feeling the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think many of us are feeling that the light's about to turn green. And one of the reasons I'm so excited to have you on is that when the light turns green, there's going to be people who get quickly way ahead of everyone else. And there's going to be the majority of people who are left behind. And some of the great things I've learned from you is how to be in that first mover pack that gets way ahead. So imagining the light is turning green, what are some of the tips that you can give people who want to be ahead of the pack?
Yeah, okay. So I think that's one that I've thought a lot about. And actually, there's a guy who is one of my heroes, this guy, Richard Koch, and he just wrote this book called Unreasonable Success. If any of you guys want to check out his book, I've got no relation or contact except the occasional email with Richard. But his book is phenomenal. And he talks about, the things that lead to people having unreasonable success, right? And that's really what we're talking about. And in a lot of ways, I think it has to do with surrounding yourself with people who are succeeding. And that's what you and I do. We put ourselves around other thought leaders, other change makers, people who are leading the charge on a lot of these things. And, for you and me, it's like we see them every day. So it's like, oh, it's a Tuesday at the office, right? But for the majority of people, if they saw the people that you and I communicate with, the people that we're around, these are leaders in cryptocurrency, people that have created cryptocurrencies that are changing the world, leaders in media and entertainment and technology, in all these fields of business. And those are the people that we surround ourselves with. So when you or me have an idea, that idea is amplified by orders of magnitude just from our network alone. There's another great book by a professor, Professor Barabasi, and I believe he's a Portuguese professor. I could be wrong, but he wrote a book called The Success Formula. And in it, he talks about that. What are the two key elements of success? He researched and he studied people who for years who were successful, and he tried to find what's the algorithm behind these people. What makes somebody successful and somebody else not? And can you guess what those two items might be? Those two things, the two elements that make somebody successful?
I would think drive has to be one of them. Maybe not drive, and also persistence. That they're undeterred. That no matter what gets in their way, they're going to pick themselves up. I recently interviewed someone who said she. In fact, we actually heard her this past Saturday. It was Amelia. She talked about loving failure. That she sees failure as not as a failure, but sort of as a chance to pivot. A chance to just sort of reset. So, but those would be my guesses.
Yeah, so interesting. So broad categories help sell books, but they're really, in my opinion, BS, because there's all shades of gray between success and failure, and I often hate failure. So a different story. But here's the thing. The two elements that he talked about, number one was performance. Number two was network. And in the absence of performance, it's just network. That's it. So you look at an artist, for example, and he studied, big blue chip artists, right? Like there's a guy called Jean-Michel Basquiat. I'm sure you've heard of Basquiat and his work. He was around with Warhol. Well, what did Basquiat do? Was he an amazing artist? Okay, art people will argue, but if you talk to art historians and art professors and people that are really knowledgeable, they'll say, you know what? It's decent color theory and, but the art isn't really that much better than other people in that era. There are established artists in that era that were far superior performance-wise, skill levels, right? And their artwork sells for $5,000, $10,000. A Basquiat just sold for $48 million. There's another one I think was on auction for $138 million, right? What is it that made him so many degrees more successful? And the answer to that was network. He didn't, like you said, drive is part of it. He didn't just lay around as a kid. He walked into coffee houses with art that he hand drew as a homeless kid in Brooklyn on postcards, and he threw them in Andy Warhol's face while Warhol was there with the who's who of New York society, and he threw those postcards at Warhol's face until Warhol bought them. And then he hounded Warhol until Warhol took him into the factory and had him doing art with Warhol. And that created a landslide of networks for him that created that success. So how do I find what the next trends are? How do I find what's successful, what businesses are successful, what the next things are? It's through our mutual friends. So for example, Ken Rutowski, founder of Metal, he has always, and I've known him for 25 plus years, always been on the leading edge of finding products, of finding trends that are going on. I talk to him all the time. I pick his brain, right? All the people within our network contribute to this insight that I have. Right.
So how do people get it? Okay. So how would you recommend people get into these networks? Because there's probably a lot of people viewing and listening and saying, "Oh, I'd want to be part of that." So are there some keys to being able to get into that kind of network and have the network accept you and embrace you and support you?
So I think this is a process. That's a really good question. So I think the first and most important step, Mark, and I don't know if you would agree with me or not, is that I think you need to have a mind shift, a mindset shift that you belong to that club. A mentor of mine, a guy named Stuart Wilde, he wrote this book called The Trick to Money. He was a fantastic New Age guru, the best of the best. He created that whole genre of New Age books, and he passed away some years ago. Stuart would always tell me, you know what? Fake it till you make it. And you got to always sign up for the club. So you got to join just in your feelings. So if you see a bunch of people out there and, the guy's sitting in his Lamborghini and he's having his coffee in the, fancy cafe in Rodeo Drive and he's sitting there, if you look at him and you go, that FNA, whatever, right? You're not joining the club, buddy. Right. And that's so often, especially with millennials, they do that. Right. If you're hating on people, if you have time to hate on people, you're not joining the club. Right. If instead you walk up to him, there's one of my favorite YouTube, TikTok, Instagrammers. He walks up to people in these supercars and he goes, "Excuse me, what do you do for a living?" Just straight to people. He'll walk up to a guy in a Ferrari, tap on the window, go say, "Excuse me, what do you do for a living?" Right. And he's genuine and he just wants to learn. And I think that's one of the things that's made this kid into a phenomenon, right? But he's joining the club. And so many times these guys have been like, "Oh yeah, come on in, hop on in the car, right? And then come to my mansion in Miami and come on the boats, right?" And you join from really your heart. You stop hating on people that are successful and you start learning from them, right? And you can do it anywhere. All around you is affluence, wherever you're at. And so the first step is to have that mindset change where I can be part of that, right? Stuart would always tell us, hey, even if you don't have any money, go to the most expensive hotel in town pre-COVID and sit down in the lobby and have a coffee. It might cost you $7. That's an expensive coffee, but no problem. Sit there and take all day sipping that coffee. Why? Because you are joining the energy of that big hotel with the big marble arches and the people walking in with their Ferraris and Lamborghinis, and you make yourself part of that club just in your own energy, just in your own feelings. So it sounds really esoteric, and I'm not, a big fan of woo-woo or any of that stuff. But in reality, it works because you start bringing that kind of stimulus of wealth, of success, of abundance to yourself, right? Just by deciding, you know what? I'm not going to be an a-hole and hate on these people. I'm going to be a part of this. I am now part of this club, maybe just a little bit, but I'm sitting here at this cafe and I'm doing that, right? Or you go to the most expensive car dealership in town and you tell them you're interested in the latest Ferrari or whatever. And you look at it, you smell the seats, you see how that leather smells, you see what the key looks like, you see how they treat you when you walk in there, right? And you are taking ownership. So that's the first step. The second step is that you need to have access. And how do you get access? Well, you don't make any friends staying at home by yourself. You just don't. And things are changing, and as things are opening up, with this whole COVID thing. So putting yourself out there, being a part of other functions, joining groups like the one that me and you are members of, and just being open to what else is going on. If you do that, people will connect with you and you will have an opportunity to connect with people. The third is finding mentorship, seeking a mentor. Now I run a mastermind group for Amazon for people that are interested in selling and making money on Amazon, but we're not going to talk about that now, but that's another way to do it. When people want to join that type of thing, you can join a group. So we have a group where, we've got just under about 100 people, and they all are from different levels, people from different areas in the world. And their goal is to create recurring predictable revenue so they don't have to sell their hours. And this is what I teach and what I encourage people to do, because I've made my money in my lifetime, over $1 billion in revenue. My goal now in life is to empower people to reach the absolute level of freedom. And what that means to me is being able to do what you want, when you want, with whoever you want. Super simple. So how do you get that freedom?
Yeah. So do you think it helps when you come from broke, when you come from, I mean, sometimes, people, when they have too much, they don't have the same drive, the same hunger. But do you think it helps to come from, if I don't make it happen, no one's going to make it happen. And I'm not just going to end up on the dregs or an alcoholic. So what was your background?
Well, I came from nothing. My parents were immigrants. We came here from Iran. I left home when I was very young, about 15, and did whatever I had to do to succeed. So, I slept on the beach. I slept in my car. I slept on couches. I did whatever it took to succeed. And, there were days where I didn't eat. It didn't matter. Right. I had that discipline, and, that discipline came from, a young age. I was interested in martial arts, and, I built a pretty strong martial arts practice from a very young age. And that gave me kind of the mental discipline, the Eastern philosophy, and the fortitude to be able to do that. To your first question, though, having money makes everything easier. Right. I know very few people who would argue with that. Having money makes most things easier. However, where I think you're coming from is, can it be an impediment? And the answer is yes, but there are other things I think that are more important than drive, right? If you have enough money, you don't really have to be that driven. In fact, most of the successful people I know practice some degree of being lazy. So it just depends on, again, where you're at in that trajectory. Ultimately, you want to get to a point where you can be, a lazy CEO, where you can have your stuff on autopilot. And again, more of what we teach in Amazon Mastery, where you can have your stuff on autopilot. You can, for example, have virtual assistants all over the world managing your businesses, be diversified enough where, if something happens to one business, the other business picks up, and be able to live your life in absolute freedom. Freedom is the ultimate luxury, Doc. And you know this, right? You used to, be in practice. You had patients every day, right? That basically took up all of your time, right? But now you have a much higher degree of freedom, and you get to do what you want, when you want, and you're impacting more people on a wholesale level by doing that. So the impact of the work that you're doing has gone up exponentially, and the work that the physical time that you spend has gone down dramatically.
So I don't know if you can address this. As I look at LinkedIn, I could have it wrong, but I don't see LinkedIn necessarily as the land of entrepreneurship. I mean, entrepreneurs are on LinkedIn, but, when you look at LinkedIn, there's a lot of people working in large companies. They're looking to make sales. They're looking to find a job and that kind of thing. Any tips you can give any of those people who feel almost imprisoned by that? What are some steps? Maybe you've already given them. It's not, open up your mindset instead of having this staying in that corporate lane where you don't think outside the box. Maybe be curious, or maybe just schedule an hour every day. I'm going to do stuff that's outside of this inside the box living. But it would seem to me that a lot of LinkedIn people would love to have your life and have your freedom. Any tips that you can give them so they could break free?
Yeah, look, you're not going to get rich working for somebody else unless you're a C-level exec and you get, stocks or whatever, which is, 1% of the 1%. You're never going to get rich working for somebody else. So ultimately, you're going to want to work for yourself. And the way that works is you have to be in a place where you have that foundation, right? With anything in life, right? You got to be stable right? Before you can go on to have a relationship. Like you know, Doc, all the people that you coach and that you've seen, right? Until you have that stability, you can't go to the next step. So same in business, you got to be stable. You got to have enough financial resources for 6 months where you can say, you know what, I'm cool. Where you can give your middle finger to any boss that you don't like and be fine. So your first goal has to always be, I'm going to get comfortable and have 6 months worth of reserves, of financial reserves. So no matter what happens, I'm okay for 6 months. And you know what? If it takes a little longer, I can squeeze. I can have, a few less Starbucks. I'll be okay, right? You can squeeze it to 8 months, right? But generally, that's the first step, is you got to have foundational thinking, because nothing good happens overnight. It just doesn't, right? It takes time. It takes time to build legacy. It takes time to build these businesses, especially on Amazon. It takes time, right? All these guys, gurus, all these people selling courses and selling this, that, and coaching, whatever, it's all BS. Everything good takes time. Now, you can work a little faster. You can work a little slower. That stuff is negotiable. So the first step is you build the foundation. The second step is you use a proven system, right? My good friend and mentor, Wayne Boss, always teaches us, 3 elements, right? Knowledge, courage, action, the 3 steps, right? So you get the knowledge, the first step, right? Where do you get knowledge? You can buy it, you can rent it, you can steal it. Doesn't matter. You got to get that knowledge, right? Once you get that knowledge, having that knowledge gives you the courage to move to the next step. Right now, I know how to open the parachute, and I know that 99.9% of the time it's safe if I do it in this way. I now have the courage to pull that chute, right? And once you have the courage, that gives you the ability to take action, the one element that nothing else is possible without. And when you have those 3 elements, knowledge, courage, and action, you can accomplish anything. So in the example of wanting to start a business on Amazon, the largest platform in the world that's open to every single person on the planet right now to go on there and sell, with virtually little or no money, you can start a business that can grow to be a multi-million-dollar business, just like we did, just like we teach people how to do every day. If you want to do that, you got to have the foundation first, then the knowledge. So you go through a process of acquiring knowledge. Either you join a group, or you read books, or you research online. You get that knowledge. And having that knowledge gives you that confidence. And that's really the 3-pronged approach that we teach, and that, I teach all of my students and share with all my clients.
Could you whet our appetites with a piece of knowledge about, let's say someone wants to be successful on Amazon. So what is some of the early ahas that people get that you teach them that they never would have thought of? Because the promise of no strings attached is that we share information that people would say, I never would have thought of that, and I think that would work. So any little gems you can share just to whet people's appetite so they'd say, oh, I never would have thought of that. Maybe it's possible, just maybe it's possible for me to be successful on Amazon.
Yeah, sure. So, the first aha moment that I think most people have is that you don't want to create a product and then go out there into the world and find a market for it. Oh, I have the genius idea, Doc. I got this genius idea for this better mousetrap. And now I'm going to go out and find people who need a mousetrap. And then you go out there and you find out, you know what? People just want a cheaper mousetrap. They don't really want a better one. They think the mousetraps are pretty darn good at catching mice. So where are you at? You've got a warehouse full of 50,000 mousetraps that you don't know what to do with. Instead, we work backwards. We go ahead and we look at products that other people are selling. We look at what the market needs. We look at the traffic going to those products. And then what we do is we go in there and we create a product to match the market need. Rather than finding a product and going out there and finding a market for it, we do the opposite. And that's worked swimmingly over the course of the last several years. The second aha moment that I could share with you is that the riches are in the niches. We say this often. And what that means is that the further down you go, the more niche you get, when you're discovering what your product is, the better off you're going to do because you're going to have less competition for that market. So if you were to tell me, hey, I want to sell cell phone cases, I'd be like, oh, a lot of people selling that, right? It's the race to bottom. You got lots of competition. But if you said, hey, I looked at cell phone cases, there's too much competition. And then I looked at clips for cell phone cases. And then I looked at magnets that you stick on the back of cell phone cases. And those magnets are doing really well because photographers use those magnets to fasten the cases to their tripod. And there aren't that many people selling it. Now you're getting into it. You might actually find out that the glue that you glue the magnet onto the case is selling more than the cases, or is a much better bet for you. And that's the algorithm that we teach. How you find these niches, how you find these products and get them to create, at first, it's not a lot. It's $5,000, $10,000 a month. And then from there you grow, you make 50,000, 100,000. I've got clients that are making millions of dollars selling, a number of products on the Amazon platform. It's all possible now because it's an open door policy. Anybody could sell on Amazon.
You just triggered something. Do you know the story of IDEO and how they find out customer needs in markets?
No.
So IDEO is one of the top design companies in the world. They designed a lot of the Apple products, and they have something called IDEO University. And I think it's something you can enroll in if you're watching this. But what they do, and I interviewed Tim Brown, he's the chair of IDEO. He was the CEO for 20 years before that. And what they do at IDEO is they have people from all backgrounds. They'll have computer scientists, programmers, psychologists, sociologists, biologists, historians. And they basically say, go out and be what we call be a first-class noticer. So it's not unlike the person who's going up to the Ferrari and saying, what do you do as a job? They'd say, geez, if you see someone frustrated with something, go up to them and say, I couldn't help but notice you seem frustrated about something. What are you most frustrated about? Is there anything in this store or what you're looking at that actually makes you angry? And so find out what it is that they're most angry about, because anger leads to action. Or if you see someone and they're delighted about something, some product or something, and you go say, boy, that put a smile on your face. What are you smiling about? Well, I like this. What would put a huge smile on your face in that product? Well, if they could do such and such. And then what happens is they have all these people from different backgrounds come in, because they all have different perspectives. A psychologist thinks different from a computer programmer. And then they all come together and they have these creative collisions and they say, what'd you notice? And then they allow that to morph into, something. Here's something we discovered that really ticks people off. I mean, it ticks them off so much they would buy anything that would make that go away. Or here's something that we're finding that excites people in a particular area. So that's something that seems to be similar to what you're saying, is go out there and identify something that nobody's seeing, but you don't necessarily have to be the visionary. You just have to be the person who notices emotion in people and asks them what the emotion's about. See what they tell you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's so important. Like I look at also, looking at people's emotions and how people buy things and seeing that, it's really, most decisions start emotionally. People think they're thinking logically, but it's really emotions that drive everything that we do. Just like I tell my wife often that, I refuse to buy things from people I don't like. And, it's a human fallacy, right? Because I should buy, whatever, the better product is, but I'll eat at a crappier restaurant. I will, purchase an inferior product if I like the person who's selling it to me. It's kind of like my way of voting for how I feel my world should be, and I think everyone's like that. I think it's so important, to be a good gauge of those things.
No, that's true. That's true. I did something a couple of weeks ago. I gave a talk to an accelerator group, and I probably didn't share this with you, but I'm wondering what you think of it. And I talked about how to think like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk. And I said, what visionary people have. And I said, they're not necessarily visionary leaders. I mean, Steve Jobs wasn't the best leader. He kind of abused people. But the way visionaries think is something we call the 3Ds. They define reality. And so Steve Jobs would say, technology is not going away. Computers aren't just for geeks. One of these days, everybody's going to have a computer. They're going to probably want one on their own desk. So he defined reality. When he first got interested in computers, it was for geeks. But he thought, this is not going away. And so he defined that future. Elon Musk did the same thing with electric cars. And then the second D, and maybe it's what you said, maybe it's probably knowledge, courage, and action. And the second D is you declare your intention to do it. I'm going to do this. I don't know how we're going to do it, but I'm going to do it. We're going to make a computer that's going to be fun, so it's not just typing and stuff. And then the third D is you decide strategy. How are we going to do it? Okay, that's good. How are we going to do it? What are the actions we're going to take? Who are the people? But I especially like the first D. So so something that you're a visionary, Shane, and you define reality and said, wait a minute, Amazon's not going away. Wait a minute, anyone can sell anything to anyone. Wait a minute, the people that are in a huge market, it's going to be a commodity. They're going to have to give the stuff away because there's too many of them. Wait a minute, maybe I can just notice something, and it may not be sexy to find the glue that keeps a magnet on a case. But boy, if there's all kinds of cases, but there's not the best glue, the glue's the market. So you have that quality.
Yeah, you got to find the market and give the market what it needs. It's all about distribution. I talk about this in my upcoming book. Hey, I actually had a question for you. Have you ever met Dr. Paul Ekman? He seems like somebody you would know.
I don't know him, but I have met him. Yeah.
Okay. He's a hero. So, he wrote Emotions Revealed and did all that work on micro expressions. What do you think about that? What do you think about micro expressions?
Oh, I think they're incredibly telling, micro expressions, and they reveal so much. I don't want to get into politics, but boy, if you want to see which politicians are lying or telling the truth, it is just out there to be looked at. I mean, it's like, but it's amazing, which triggers something else that I think is a flaw for some people I see in technology. Or people who are pure left brain thinkers. What happens is they get caught up in something that should be a certain way according to their logic. And then they have something called confirmation bias. So they keep going out at the world to reinforce this view they have. And I'll tell you something that, I've gotten a little less sensitive, but something that used to break my heart is you could ride by new businesses that are going bankrupt in 6 months. You say, what were they thinking? They didn't think of the market, the location, the customer. They thought, oh, I love this. Oh, we love mom's chili. The world's going to love her chili. Let's put it up. And it's so painful to see people who, as you say, they get too much in love with what they have as opposed to what the market's got to have.
Yeah, there's a lot of vanity businesses like that, right? Like wine, chocolate, there's so many chocolate companies and so many wine companies because everyone's like, I love wine. Let me buy a vineyard, or I love chocolate. Let me buy a chocolate. Well, dude, every single chocolate and wine thing that you could possibly think of has been done. The market isn't saying, please give me more wine or please give me more chocolate. So by creating those, you're going into really, not a blue ocean. You're going into a red ocean, and you're going to have to compete. And more times than not, that ends up in failure rather than thinking distribution first. people often come to me, and thinking back to micro expressions and the work of Paul Ekman, we often do intense research before we launch a product. Where I used to do focus groups where we would get people in there, we'd have them behind the double glass, and there's a part of me that wishes I never read any of Dr. Ekman's books or watched any of his videos or took any of his courses, because you just can't look at people the same way anymore after you've seen his work. Because those things, those little expressions, he identified 6 human expressions that are universal. Doesn't matter if you're in Papua New Guinea or if you're in Los Angeles, California, or in New York, everybody has those same expressions, and they happen in a flash, in a second. And if you can learn to watch them, you can really start to decode what people's true intentions are. So for those of you guys who don't know, so what I teach people to do oftentimes is when they come to me and they're like, hey, I have a really great product. I'm like, great. How many sales do you have? No. It's just an idea. Okay, great. Go sell it. Oh, but I don't have the product. That's fine. Go sell it. Walk into a store and say, hey, are you going to buy CBD oil? Oh, yeah, we buy CBD oil. Great. I have a new one. What do you think of a lavender CBD oil? Oh, we love that idea. We've never heard of a lavender CBD oil. Great. How many would you like to take? Well, how much is it? How much would you like it to be? And get an order. When you get an order, then you can make it and sell it. But you're starting with distribution first. Starting product first is the biggest mistake you can make. You can get lucky. It happens. It happened to me. When I was 15, I created herbal ecstasy. It became a global phenomenon. We sold over $1 billion before I was 18. And I talk about that in my podcast and my book. If you guys want to check it out, it's Billion, How I Became King of the Thrill Pill Cult. But, at the end of the day, we did $1 billion. Maybe we could have done many billions. Maybe we could have done 10 billion if I had just looked at the market. Now, it just so happened that the market was there for what I was selling, and I had to match them up. And I got lucky, right? Sometimes you roll the dice and you get the right number. Sometimes when you're playing roulette, it falls on double green and you're on double green. So that happened to me when I was doing ecstasy. And of course, the elements of performance were there. The product was good. It did what it said it was going to do. And the network was there. I had built out that network over my time in the rave culture and electronic music scene culture. And I had built out that network. So I had network, I had performance. The product was good. We had all those elements to it, but I went the long way, right? And you say, oh, well, you got there. Yeah, I did. It doesn't mean you can't get there any other way. But now we want to use a lever. We want to use 3 ounces of pressure to achieve 3,000 pounds of result on the other end. And how do you do that? It's not product first. It's market first.
You just gave me an idea that I'm going to give out. So tell me what you think of this idea, because it's half baked, because you triggered it. I just interviewed a phenomenal guy named Stephen Kotler, and his latest book is called The Art of Impossible.
Love Stephen Kotler.
And he was phenomenal. Just, he was right before you, this interview. But here's an idea. There's something that I learned from a sales organization in Orange County, and it's called the impossibility question. So I won't go into it, but here's something you can do if you're interested in defining that market. Go out to your, go out to stores or businesses, restaurants, or whatever, anything that you like, and go up to the owner and say, I'm doing a survey called the impossibility question. And you say, what would be impossible for you to do, or what product would be impossible to make, but if it was made and you could sell it, it would be hugely successful. So when you ask people the impossibility question, it bypasses you're coming up with something and people saying, well, that's impossible. And so it's also something you do with your teams. You could say, what is something that you could do that would be impossible to do, but if you could do it, would exponentially increase your results and guarantee you getting a big raise? And then they'll say, well, it would probably be impossible to do this. Okay, what would make it possible? but I could see you going out, and it's a way of gathering people from and they'd probably I'll tell you, people love answering the questions. I was actually on a television show called The View some years ago, and I think it's still going. And someone was miking me, and he was the segment producer. And I like to reward people who do a good job by helping them with their future. And I said, where do you want to be in 5 years? He said, I'd like to be an executive producer. He wants Ken Sky's job for no strings attached. And I said, well, what have you been doing? He said, I've been doing this for about 10 years. And I said, what would be an impossible thing for you to do? But if you could do it, would rapidly get you to being an executive producer. But it's impossible. And then he said, if I could find this person named Chandra Levy, who ended up dead, this intern from years ago, if I could find her and get an exclusive interview with Barbara Walters, who is still the main honcho on the show, Barbara Walters would say, who got the story? So I said, and what would make it possible is, so if your antenna is up, what is it that would so wow Barbara Walters that she'd say, who's getting me these stories? You'd get on her radar. And it's tough to get on a radar. And what happened is, it was interesting because he left the room and then he came back and he was much calmer. And he said, no one has ever asked me such a helpful question about my career. I've been doing this for 10 years. Thank you. So I'm just sharing that you could go around and I'm telling you, you ask people the impossible question, you're going to get some ideas and then bring it home and see if it morphs into something.
That's a really good way to go. Yeah. Yeah. Prospecting, asking questions, asking for the sale. Most people don't ask for the sale. You'd be shocked. I am shocked at how bad sales skills are in the, I was going to say 20 to 30, but it's really even beyond these days. It's like people feel like, the internet era has killed the old school sales tactic. I've gotten on calls where I was ready to buy, and I never say I'm ready to buy. I wait for them to tell me, and then that way there can be a dialogue, conversation, and negotiation. People don't do the most basic thing anymore. They don't ask for the sale. They say, how many would you like, Dr. Goulston? People don't do that anymore. So, a lot of times people I coach, just making these little micro changes to the way they approach the world. Amazing. I've got a young guy now who I'm coaching who I realized he wasn't asking for the sale. And I shifted his thing. We doubled his prices was the first thing that we did when he came on board. And the second thing that we did was we just got him to ask for the sale. I said, the first week, that's all you're doing. Instantly tripled his sales. Instantly. Just by asking for the sale. He would end calls, his whole presentations would be spectacular. The service he's providing is spectacular. He's really onto something. But at the end of the call, people would be like, well, thank you for sharing with me.
Now, what I mean? Hey, believe me, I know it. I suffer from that. I don't ask for the sale.
Yeah, I tell him, a pretty girl isn't going to ask you to come upstairs, buddy. You gotta, be the one asking for the close, right? You've got a great thing going. Sorry for the noise back there. It's going to be loud for 2 seconds.
Shaahin is bringing up a good point, is that, and what I like about Shaahin has this personality where he can ask for the sale and you don't have any of the stereotypes of him being pushy or any of those things. I think the fear of a lot of people who are afraid to ask for the sale is, I don't want them to see that I'm pushy or that I'm greedy or that I'm such and such. And then, I suppose you can say, well, then you probably shouldn't be in the sales business, and you're not being pushy. You're bringing it to an action and getting the person to take action, maybe buying something that will solve a problem for them.
Let me tell you something, Doc. We are all in the sales business. Some of us are better than others. And at the end of the day, the reason why I'm not pushy, A, I don't give a you know what. And B, I really feel what I'm doing is bringing value to people. I truly, in my heart, don't feel like I am, one of these scammy guys selling just BS to people who don't need it for something they don't want. I feel strongly about every single thing that I offer, every single product I sell, every single pill I make, every single service that I provide. First and foremost, I feel like I bring value to help empower other people. First and foremost. So I have that courage because of that. Secondly, I feel like I'm doing you a disservice if I keep you from all this awesome stuff that I have going on. And I can't tell you how many times after people have signed up for my courses, people have signed up for my masterminds, my coaching, all this stuff. At the end, they say they're almost angry at me that I didn't tell them about this sooner. Okay. So again, the people I coach, I tell them this too, that you have to be in the mindset that you are providing a service. Very similar, I hate to keep using dating analogies, but it's very similar to that. You make yourself be an awesome person. And then when you go out, asking for the date, asking for somebody to go out with you, you're not asking them to do you a favor. You are bringing something amazing to the table. You are a loving, kind, dynamic, exciting person to be around.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think also what you bring up is that I think you have the ability to also see things that have value. It's not like you're trying to pad something that inherently has no value. I mean, people being successful on Amazon has huge value. Amazon's not going away. It's still the wild, wild west. And so people want to be successful. I mean, something I don't sell, and it's 180 degrees in the other direction. But, there's a suicide epidemic, and, I have a track record of 30 years and nobody killed themselves. I don't practice anymore, but that's not a tough sell if you go into a place in which they're troubled by that and we got to put an end to it. I might be able to help you to put an end to it.
Best in the world at what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe a way to sort of end this is that, what you really want to figure out is what are the things that certain people who have money gotta have. Because when you can create gotta have something, you actually don't have to sell. I mean, you ask for the order, but you're an order taker. You don't have to sell, because when you identify something that people gotta have and you actually have it, you're not faking it. People just line up. That's what happens at the Apple store. People got to have the latest Apple product. You don't have to sell Apple products. Yeah. So thank you, Shaahin. You've been terrific, and I feel privileged to call you our friend too.
Oh, likewise, Doc. I value you and I appreciate you, and just to be in the same room with you is an honor. And this is exactly, we walk our talk, and that's what we're talking about now, right? We're talking about becoming a person of influence, and better than anybody that comes from inside. So what we teach, in sales and Amazon, any of this stuff is, influence. Like Professor Cialdini, who wrote the canon on influence, the book Influence, and his subsequent book Persuasion, where he talks about the pillars of influence, what it takes to influence somebody. At the end of the day, guys like you and me, we don't come off as salesy because we're not there to push something down someone's throat that they don't want. We're here to empower you, just like you do with the hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people that you've inspired with your books, with your writings, with your personal energy. You have become a person of influence by being genuine, by being powerful, and by being intentional. And those are things that you just can't make that stuff up. And people see that when they see you, when they see the work, when they see your energy, even if they don't know you, that's something that you feel. And that's super important. And I'm really grateful to have an opportunity to be on the show with you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And so Ken, Ken usually takes us home. So Ken, any thoughts or comments or anything you want to reflect back? Because Shaahin is like drinking from an incredibly positive fire hose of success and motivation and inspiration.
Absolutely. Wonderful. That was such a pleasure to listen in here. And thank you for being on the show. So I made a few notes to sort of summarize what we talked about. And when we have an idea, that idea is magnified by a network. That was a huge light bulb for me. And also sort of this confirms what I've experienced this past year. The algorithm to success, number 1, performance. Number 2, network. So choose your network wisely. The keys to be in the right network. Well, here you go. Number 1, mindset shift, that you belong to the club. Fake it till you make it. Number 2, access. Don't stay at home unless you have to, but virtually you can be anywhere. And number 3, mentorship. And it's an absolute pleasure for me to call Dr. Mark Goulston one of my mentors. And what you want, when you want it, and however you want it. So that's freedom. And you do that amazingly, Shane. So that knowledge equals confidence, and then courage, and then action. That equals success. That's the formula right there. So for anybody wondering, there you have it. Delivered on a silver platter by Shaahin today. Proper research. If you want to get into sales on Amazon, don't try to sell what you like, but see what people want to buy. And Dr. Mark Goulston contributed with what product would be impossible to create. And that would be a great starting point. And give the market what it needs. And it always starts with distribution first, market first. At the end of the day, we're all in sales business. Ask for the sale.
See, I do this, Shaahin. I want to make sure that while he's off the screen, he's not sleeping. No. Ken is wonderful. Thank you for bringing us home as you always do. And Ken's going to be he's going to be the guest on a future show about bringing magic to your Zoom events, because he's just the person to do that. So thank you, Shaahin, and thank you for viewers for watching in and listening. And please share this and tell us how we can serve you better. Suggest some guests that we could have on so that we can pull out of them some of their magic with no strings attached. So until next time, thank you.
I believe we could also post the link to Shaahin's podcast in the comment section on the video on LinkedIn as well. So for those of you watching,
yes, please do that.
Would encourage you to check it out. It's going to be just as amazing. So with that, thank you so much, Shaahin. I'll take you off the screen. And Dr. Mark.